In a small apartment where the morning sun streamed through the window, Amy Harrison peered through the viewfinder of her camera mounted on a tripod. Her fingertips sometimes trembled, but only at the moment they touched the shutter. It wasn't from fear, but from the joy of capturing a moment perfect. Amy smiled with satisfaction. After 10 years as a freelance photographer, her portfolio had steadily gained recognition. Her photographs were now being selected for premier magazines like National Geographic. And at a time, however, not a single member of her family genuinely celebrated her success. Amy's smartphone rang, notifying her of a call from her mother, Martha. Amy hesitated for a moment, but took a deep breath and pressed the answer button. "Amy, are you listening? You received Brittany's wedding invitation, don't you?" Martha's voice had its usual mix of sweetness and coldness. As a former model, her mother was a respected figure in Boston's social circles with her perfect makeup and elegant attire. "Yes, I received it. Make sure you dress properly. Don't show up in an embarrassing outfit like you did at last year's Christmas party." Amy closed her eyes last Christmas. She had come directly to her parents' home after a photo shoot in New York. Wearing her casual jeans and sweater just for that, she endured mocking glances from Martha and Brittany all evening. "It's Brittany's special day. Don't ruin it with your presents." When the call ended, Amy threw herself onto the sofa. Since childhood, her position in the family had been below second place. Her father, George, was the president of a successful real estate company in suburban Boston. His concerns were always about family appearance and social status. When Amy said she wanted to study photography at art school, her father's face turned red with anger. "You can't make a living with photography." Nevertheless, Amy chose her own path. She graduated college with scholarships and night jobs, then became independent. Meanwhile, her sister Brittany was blessed with beauty like their mother and was successful as a model. She was always her parents' pride, the perfect daughter. Amy's phone rang again, this time with a message from Brittany. "Hey, are you busy with your photography work? Would you take pictures at my wedding for free?" "Of course, we're family after all." Amy smiled. Riley Brittany recognized her value as a photographer only in terms of being free to use. Still, Amy sent a polite refusal. She knew that if she brought her camera and focused on taking photos, she would face criticism again. Brittany's fiancé, James Winston, was the son of an old, wealthy New England family and a young executive at an investment bank. Her parents were delighted with the marriage, as it would further elevate the Harrison family's social status. Amy opened her computer and returned to editing her recent photographs. Children smiling and dancing in bright sunlight. It was a scene of family filled with unconditional love that she had never experienced living between Boston and New York. Amy had felt many times that leaving her parents' home was the right decision. Still, she was invited to family events like Christmas, Thanksgiving. And now, Brittany's wedding, probably to maintain the facade of a Love and G family, Amy took the invitation out of her drawer, an elegant cream-colored thick paper with gold printing Brittany and James's wedding, a ceremony at a historic cathedral in suburban Boston, and a reception at a 5-star hotel. It would surely be a fairy tale wedding. The phone rang with a call from an art director. Amy's photographs had been highly evaluated and would grace the cover of a famous magazine. This was a significant step for her career. While trembling with joy, she felt an impulse to tell her family first, but she was quickly brought back to reality in the past. When she shared her successes, they would say it was just luck or a temporary, or they would completely ignore it. Her mother would say, "Anyone can take pictures of models," while Brittany would mock, "It's thanks to beautiful models like me." Her father would just lecture her to get a stable job. Amy decided to celebrate the news alone on the wedding day. The historic St. Mary's Cathedral in Boston's suburbs was filled with excitement from early morning. Amy stepped out of a taxi and adjusted the hem of her simple emerald green dress. She had tried to be modest yet elegant, hoping to avoid criticism from her family inside the cathedral. White and pink roses reflected Brittany's taste with transparent chiffon fabric, elegantly hanging from the high ceiling. When Amy entered, many guests were already seated, dressed in splendid outfits. Miss Amy Harrison, the receptionist, checked the list and looked puzzled. "Your seat is, this way." She was guided to a small table near the entrance, the farthest from the main table, while all the surrounding tables seated 8 people with relatives and friends chatting pleasantly. Amy's table had only 1 seat. "Is there some mistake?" Amy asked, but the guide shrugged apologetically. I'm sorry, according to the seating chart, this is your place." Amy took a deep breath to control her emotions and sat at the designated seat in her bag. She clutched a small USB drive while waiting for the ceremony to begin. She quietly observed the venue with a professional photographer's eye. Despite feeling uncomfortable in her isolated situation, the ceremony began with the solemn sound of a pipe organ. James stood in front of the altar in his tuxedo, nervously waiting for the bride's entrance. When Brittany entered, led by their parents, a murmur ran through the venue. She was wrapped in a custom silk and lace wedding dress, looking as if she had stepped out of a movie scene during the ceremony. Amy sat quietly watching her sister's special moment. Complex emotions crossed her heart. Not envy, but a wish that this happiness would be real. And at the same time, guilt over the truth she knew. After the ceremony, the guests moved to the grand ballroom of the hotel for the reception. Sparkling chandeliers, luxurious decorations, and a professional orchestra's live performance. Everything was in perfect harmony, showcasing the wealth and power of the Harrison and Winston families. When dinner time arrived, service staff began bringing out the food. Luxurious appetizers and main dishes were served to each table. However, Amy's table was bypassed. While all the invited guests were enjoying foie gras and caviar, all that was placed before her was a single piece of dry bread on a small plate. Amy didn't take long to understand the situation. This wasn't a coincidence or mistake. It was a deliberate insult. Guests around her began to notice, and their glances toward her mixed with sympathy and confusion, but no one offered to help. "Oh, Amy," Martha approached her mother's face, adorned with a pearl necklace and an expensive dress, wore a thin smile. "Do you like the meal?" Amy controlled her emotions and responded, "What do you mean?" Martha lowered her voice to avoid being overheard and said, "This is enough for you, isn't it? Photographers like you always eat whatever they can find on site, don't they?" Those words hurt Amy's heart, but before she could respond, Brittany, in her pure white wedding dress, left her new husband's arm and approached Amy. "His table, sis. Are you enjoying yourself?" Brittany's voice was sweet as honey, but her eyes were cold. "I'm glad you came on my special day, but don't worry, I'm not expecting congratulations from you." Amy silently stared at her sister. "You're really pathetic." Brittany pointed at the single piece of bread, and while keeping her voice down, spoke poisonous words. "But you're always alone anyway, right? No lover, few friends, not a life where you're loved like me." Brittany elegantly turned on her heel and returned to James. Martha, also left with a malicious smile, guests sit nearby tables, awkwardly looked away, trying to change the subject. Amy firmly gripped the USB drive she had taken from her bag. Her fingertips were trembling, but it wasn't from fear. It was a sign of determination. The time had come to show her answer to years of humiliation and insults here and now. As time passed and dinner ended, the time for speeches arrived. The groom's father, Brittany's best friend, and George all spoke moving words, and the venue was filled with applause and laughter as the scheduled speeches were coming to an end. The MC suddenly took the microphone and made an unscheduled announcement. "May I have your attention, please? We have a few words from the bride's sister." Amy Harrison. Looks of surprise spread throughout the venue, especially on the faces of her parents and Brittany, who couldn't hide their agitation. Amy stood up quietly and walked toward the stage with dignified steps. "Good evening, everyone." Amy's voice was surprisingly calm. "On my sister's special day, I've prepared a special gift." She handed the USB drive to the MC and gave quiet instructions. The MC, though a bit confused, passed it to the technician. "Now please watch this special video," Amy said. Looking around the venue, a large screen came down and the lights dimmed as the video was about to start. Amy clearly saw Brittany and Martha's faces turn pale. "Wait," Brittany said quietly. Her eyes were wide with fear the moment the first image appeared on the screen. She screamed, "Stop! Stop it now!" Martha also hurriedly stood up and raised her voice. "What is this?" But the video didn't stop. The eyes of more than 200 guests gathered in the venue were all fixed on the screen. What was displayed there was a shocking truth that no one had expected. Amy stood on the stage, smiling quietly, feeling the emotions she had bottled up for years. Being released, the first image on the screen, held a caption with the date and place from 6 months ago. Brittany Harrison engagement party, Boston Harbor Hotel. The video began with scenes from a luxurious engagement party held in the penthouse suite of a high-end hotel, champagne toasts, smiling guests, and a kiss scene between James and Brittany. It looked like a perfect love story. On this day, I was suddenly called by my mother. Amy's calm voice flowed as narration. She wanted me to use my skills as a photographer to capture the party. The scene changed to show a conversation between Amy and Martha. It was clearly a secretly recorded video. "Amy, it's good. You brought your camera. Can you take pictures of the party?" Martha's voice was sweet, of course, but since it's a sudden request, "I don't have sufficient equipment," Amy replied. "That's fine. Oh, yes. Since this is a family event, it's free of charge." "Of course," Martha said with a smile. "But Mom, this is professional work. What are you saying? It's for family, right? Are you asking for money? Are you trying to ruin Brittany's special day?" Martha's voice turned cold. The video returned to the party venue showing Amy capturing natural expressions of guests and family as a professional photographer. Then, when she was filming near the bar counter, Brittany accidentally entered the frame. She was staring at her mobile phone in a corner of the venue and suddenly changed her expression. The camera captured her hands, and a close-up of the incoming message content appeared. "Waiting for you tonight at the usual place. Let's make this the last night we spend in my bed." "Not Jubby's meek," a murmur arose from the guests in the venue. James's face froze, and his parents were visibly upset. Brittany stood up and shouted, "It's a lie, this is edited," but the video continued mercilessly that night. I was planning to go home, but I went back to get something I had forgotten and accidentally witnessed Brittany meeting someone. The next scene was in the hallway of a luxury hotel. A small camera attached to Amy's camera bag captured Brittany exiting an elevator and heading to another room. When the door opened, a handsome man, not James, appeared and passionately embraced Brittany Mike. I couldn't wait. Brittany's sweet voice could be clearly heard me neither. "It's good that James is on a business trip," the man replied. The venue completely froze. James stood up and shouted in a voice trembling with anger. "What is the meaning of this?" The video continued, this time with a caption for a different date. 2 months ago, Harrison Family Mansion. Amy visits her parents' home. She opens the front door and calls out. But there's no answer, hearing voices from inside. Amy heads in that direction. She stops just outside the dining room and listens to her parents and Brittany talking. "I'm worried about Amy Martha's voice. I heard her recent photo exhibition was successful, but I don't see what value it had. Has shake always been our shame?" George replies, "Her degree, her career, all chosen against our wishes. What does it matter if she's successful? Now sis is just a burden on this family." Brittany's voice continues, "I don't even want to invite her to my wedding. But I have to because relatives would think it's strange. Let's prepare a special seat for her." Mara laughs, coldly, a table all by herself, away from everyone. And a special meal too, like a single piece of dry bread. Brittany laughs, "Perfect for my pathetic sister." The video shakes with Amy's trembling hand as the three's cruel laughter echoes. Their sadness and anger seem to transmit through the camera in the venue, the guests. Expressions were changing. They had initially been surprised by Brittany's betrayal, but now they were beginning to look at Amy with sympathy. Martha and George sat at their table. Their faces is red and unable to move. The video continued, revealing one humiliation after another in Amy's life. The day when her parents prioritized Brittany's ballet recital on Amy's 10th birthday, canceling her birthday party the day when her parents didn't show up for her high school graduation. Instead, accompanying Brittany to a model audition the day when not a single family member came to Amy's first photo exhibition. Then the video moves to a decisive scene with a C1 week ago, Ritz-Carlton Hotel. It shows Brittany and the man called Mike meeting secretly in the hotel lobby. "How are the wedding preparations?" Mike asks, annoying, "But I want James's money and status." Brittany answers, "We can continue our relationship after I'm married. He travels for business 3 days a week anyway." Is that okay? Getting married to someone you don't really love? Love doesn't matter. What I want is a stable life and social status. And Mom and Dad are delighted too with the connection to the Winston family. Dad's business can expand. The video then switches to a conversation between George and Martha recorded in another place. They are discussing Amy's photo exhibition. It seems Amy's photo exhibition was featured in the New York Times. George says, looking at a newspaper, "Don't worry about it." Martha says coldly, "Her success means nothing to us. Instead, let's think about how to damage her reputation. The more famous she becomes, the more questions people will ask Kay about our family." Right? George agrees. "I'll spread rumors among my real estate clients that her photos are technically inferior and masked by editing." As the video nears its end, a final scene is shown Amy alone in her apartment, looking at old family photos with tears, but also a determined expression. She speaks, "I've always wished to be loved, to be recognized, but today I've decided to free myself by showing the truth." The screen darkened, and when the lights came back on, the venue was wrapped in complete silence. Amy held the microphone and said in a calm voice, "I've endured everything my family has done to me. My table had only a single piece of bread, and my sister and mother laughed down at me. But just for today, I wanted everyone to know the truth." She turned to James and continued, "James, you are not at fault. You are sincere and deserve true love. Please find real happiness." As Amy was about to leave the stage, the frozen atmosphere in the venue suddenly broke. "Wait," Brittany's voice, almost like a scream, echoed. She grabbed the hem of her wedding dress and approached Amy, trembling with anger. "What have you done? You've ruined my life." Brittany's makeup was ruined with tears, and her once beautiful face was now distorted with anger and fear behind her. James stood motionless. His face was pale and his lips were trembling. "Explain, Brittany." James's voice was low and controlled, but the anger it contained was evident. "Is that video true, Jamie?" "No." Brittany turned around, suddenly adopting a weak voice that was edited. "It comes from Amy's jealousy. Stop lying." Martha interrupted. She climbed onto the stage with trembling legs and confronted Amy. "You exposing family shame in public, what do you gain from this?" George also stood up and followed his wife, raising his voice. "Are you satisfied?" Amy quietly looked at her parents. There were no tears in her eyes, just relief from being freed from years of pain. Satisfied, Amy said in a small voice, "You never once tried to understand what I wanted. All I wanted was to be recognized as family, to be loved." That's all. The atmosphere in the venue began to change. What had initially been just surprise and confusion among the guests now gave way to small whispers. The Harrison family always mistreated Amy. That video was shocking to think Brittany was betraying him. Amy's photos are wonderful, but her parents never acknowledged it. James quietly stepped forward. His expression was hard and determined enough. He said calmly, "Brittany, it's clear why you were trying to marry me, just for money and social status." "No." Jamie. Brittany grabbed his arm. "I love you," loved James, shook off her hand. "You don't know the meaning of that word." He slowly removed the engagement ring from the ring finger of his left hand and placed it on the table. "This wedding is over." A stir arose from the venue, and the Winston family relatives stood up in dismay. James's father placed his hand on his son's shoulder and said, "James, calm down." But the young man shook his head. "Dad, I am calm enough. This marriage was a mistake. I'm glad it became clear today." Brittany turned to James's parents with a desperate expression. "Please tell him this is a misunderstanding." However, the Winston couple only returned cold glances. The elderly lady said, "You were about to tarnish our family's honor." I'm really glad James learned the truth. Martha and George were in a panic for them. This marriage was more than just their daughter's happiness. The connection with the Winston family had immeasurable value for their business and social status. "Amy, please." Martha suddenly changed her attitude and turned to Amy with a pleading voice. "This is a family matter. To do such a thing in public, please don't expose us to more shame." "What are you saying now?" Amy quietly replied, "You've neglected me for over 30 years. The seating arrangement today, that dia meal of a single piece of bread, it was all planned, wasn't it?" George looked at Martha with a confused expression. "A piece of bread? What are you talking about?" "Oh, you didn't know?" Amy said it was a nice surprise from Mom and Brittany. "Only a dry piece of bread was served at my seat." George's face turned red. "Martha, did you do that well?" "She is." Martha faltered enough. George said tiredly, "Night's disaster is enough. We're going home." However, just as they were about to move, a voice came from the entrance of the venue. Amy Harrison, a tall woman in an elegant black dress, approached. Her sophisticated demeanor and sharp gaze told of her being a heavyweight in the art industry. Clarissa Amy exclaimed in, "Surprise! Why are you here? I wasn't invited, but I wanted to see your video work." Clarissa Miller smiled. She was the owner of one of New York's most influential art galleries and had built the careers of many photographers. "We had an appointment to discuss preparations for your exhibition. Remember when I couldn't reach you? I called your parents home and heard about your sister's wedding." Amy was at a loss for words. Clarissa looked around the venue and seemed to understand the screens and the chaotic situation. "I see an interesting development." She turned to Amy. "The offer for your photo, Kala, Kenkshin exhibition family portraits. Truth and illusion is still valid. What I saw today proved how sharp your vision is." Martha and George were dumbfounded. They were facing, for the first time, the fact that their daughter was discussing work with a renowned gallery owner photo collection. George opened his mouth. "What kind of content? It's natural you don't know," Clarissa said coldly. Few people can understand Amy's talent. Her work has the power to reflect human truth hidden beneath superficial beauty. Today's performance was proof of that. I think Clarissa took Amy's arm and said, "Come, let's leave this place. There's no time to waste your talent in a place like this." Amy looked around her. One radiant sister was now contorting her face with tears and anger, and her parents were rigid with shame and confusion. The grand wedding was ruined, and the Winston family people were quietly beginning to leave the venue. "I've had enough," Amy said quietly. "I was able to show the truth. That's enough for me." She was about to leave the venue with Clarissa when James stood in her way. "Amy," he said with a serious expression, "thank you. I'm grateful for your courage." Amy smiled and said, "You're a good person, James. Find true love just before leaving the venue." Amy looked back at the image of her disintegrating family. It had been the source of her pain for many years. But now it no longer had the power to control her goodbye. She whispered softly and took a step toward her new life. Getting into Clarissa's luxury car, Amy breathed a deep sigh. The spring night breeze came through the window, gently caressing her cheek. It was like a liberating wind, announcing the end of a long winter. "What will you do now?" Clarissa asked Amy. Looked up at the night sky and smiled genuinely. "For the first time, I'll continue to take truthful photographs because that's my mission." 1 year later in Manhattan's upscale gallery district, a banner saying "The Moments of Truth Amy Harrison Photo Exhibition" was hung at Clarissa Miller's gallery. A long line had formed before opening, and New York art lovers were gathering. Amy stood in the center of the gallery, dressed in a simple black dress. Around her were photographs she had taken, captivating the visitors. Powerful composition, vivid colors, and above all, her talent for capturing truthful moments of her subjects overflowed from each work. The New York Times Art Forum and National Geographic. All major media praised her talent, and the exhibition was an unprecedented success. The name Amy Harrison was now widely recognized as an international photographer. "Your success is deserved." Clarissa said she was smiling with a champagne glass in hand. Talent and truth are always recognized. Eventually, Amy returned, a grateful smile around her. Were new friends, artists, editors, and people who sympathized with her work. They were Amy's chosen family, people who, though not blood-related, understood and loved her talent and humanity. Meanwhile, the Harrison family continued to pay the price for the truth Amy had exposed after the scandal. Brittany lost her modeling jobs one after another, and Mike also abandoned her and disappeared. No longer invited to social parties, she was accumulating debts. Martha and George were similarly affected. Rumors of shady real estate company dealings that Amy had exposed dealt a serious blow to George's business. Their position in social circles also plummeted, and their former friends began to avoid them 3 months ago. Martha called Amy, "Please, we've reflected on our actions. Let's reconcile." Amy quietly replied, "Mom, I've realized that family is something you can choose. I've already found a new family if you've truly changed. That's good, but I'm not coming back on the final day of the exhibition." There was an unexpected visitor as Amy was signing autographs. There was a haggard-looking woman standing at the end of the line. Her former beauty was hidden, and she wasn't in luxury brand clothes. It was Brittany Sis. Brittany said in a small voice. There was no arrogance in her eyes anymore. "This is a wonderful exhibition." Amy silently stared at her. "I am looking for a job." Brittany continued, seeming to find it difficult to say no one will hire me. Is there anything I can help with at your studio? Silence flowed. Clarissa whispered in Amy's ear. It's your decision, but while revenge is sweet, forgiveness is stronger. Amy took a deep breath and looked at Brittany. If you're willing to start from scratch, I could hire you as a cleaning staff for the studio. Begin with the basics. Tears wet up in Brittany's eyes. Thank you, really? I'm sorry it was a small step, but a sign of genuine remorse. That night, Amy was looking up at the starry sky from the terrace of her newly opened studio in Brooklyn. Next to her was David, a young photographer she had met at the photo exhibition. His warm smile and sincere eyes brought a quiet joy to Amak's heart. What do you think? David asked. Have you decided on your next project? Amy replied while looking up at the starry sky. I'm thinking about a theme called Rebirth Stories of Destruction and Reconstruction. That's deep. David smiled. You can express it. Amy smiled back after 35 years. She had finally known her own worth and achieved victory, in the true sense. It wasn't the victory of revenge, but the victory of truth and self-liberation. New beginnings can sometimes be painful. Oh, Amy said, stretching her hand toward the night sky as if making a toast.